Hey guys, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to day 13 of Write With Me, the Ballad of Garvin Hackett. So let's get started. For those of you who are new, let's get your summary going. So title of this video is Write With Me, live screenwriting from scratch. It's going to be day 13. More research? No, it's going to be research and polish. Research and polish. And, oops, Garvin Hackett. Now I noticed something. I have this keyboard thing. Let me check something really quick. Bear with me. I'll be right back. Guys, I am back. So sorry about that. I had a little keyboard technical issue that I had to troubleshoot live. Okay, so for those of you who are new, it's this Write With Me, live screenwriting from scratch, day 13, research and polish, Garvin Hackett. And what we do here is the Ballad of Garvin Hackett is a movie script being written completely from scratch. So if you're interested in the logline itself, it's the Ballad of Garvin Hackett is an ironic, darkly comic take on 90s action movies. Forrest Gump meets Scarface, directed by Sidney Lumet, except the laws of physics actually apply. And then instead of going the traditional development route, I'm writing this movie directly for you in public to develop initially as a cinematic graphic novel. So I'll make a book about it. So if that interests you, grab a notebook or keyboard and write along with me. I will, as usual, put into my chat. Hello, everyone. Let me greet everyone. There's always an empty chat. This is my ritual here. Okay. So if you want to follow along from the beginning, I really recommend you check out the Liminal Boundaries Channel. The link is in the description. You can start from the beginning, watch this whole story evolve. All right, let's get started. What do you say? Okay, so what we're doing today, we have a little bit of research to do. So let's see. Where is the research? Research questions. All right, so the questions are mostly about Roger Gust, Whitey Jackson, Garvin's mom, who we don't even have a name for yet. So let's start with Garvin's mom, I think, because she's like low-hanging fruit. There's just no information. So let's do some quick research on her. So I want to research Cuban names for women roughly the age of Garvin's mother in the 1990s. Because his mom's Cuban. She's a refugee. Let's see what we got. So we'll flip out a little bit to the research tab here. And let's see what we got. So, hey Claude. So I'm writing a story, and one of my characters is in her 40s. She's got a 22-year-old son, and she is Cuban in Miami in 1994. So the first thing, she's a Cuban refugee, right? So the first, or maybe not a Cuban refugee. So, but she is from Cuba. So the first question is, what were the most popular Cuban names for people born 40 years before 1994? Now we'll see what Claude comes up with. See if we get some. Give her a name, right? I just don't want it to be Elsie, because that's my aunt's name. Or, let's see. But there is some inspirational experiences, because my aunt left Cuba at 18. She moved to the United States and married an American guy. So at a very young age, which is kind of interesting. Let's see, we're looking at a very Catholic, very traditional naming landscape. Carmen, Mercedes, Dolores, Rosa, Teresa, Anna. Old Catholic standards. Caridad, the most distinctively Cuban choice, after La Virgen de la Caridad del Cobre, the island's patron. The name Cachita, if you want a name that reads unmistakably Cuban and devout, this is it. Gloria, Hilda, Norma, Ida, Olga, Yolanda, Esther, Marta, Zoila, Eloisa, Oneya. Oh, that's interesting. One period accuracy flag worth catching, the wave of creative Y names Americans associate with Cubans. Yoandri, Yusimi, Yanet, Euladis is a post-revolution phenomenon, mostly 1960s onward. That I knew. A woman born in 1954 would almost certainly not have one, and giving her one would quietly date her wrong, to anyone who knows the culture. One thing tangled up in your refugee or not question is which wave she came on. That's the question, right? Because summer 1994 is exactly the Balsero crisis. It peaked in August 94. So you've got a real fork. Woman who's been in Miami since the early 60s, Golden Exile, is a totally different character. Established, maybe bitter, anti-Castro, old guard. Than one who just arrived on a raft 6 weeks before your story opens. Her name fits either way, but the migration timeline shapes everything else about her. Yes, that's correct. So let me clear that up. Yeah, so when my aunt, who was from Cuba, she was 16, or around that age, she was a teenager, she rebelled a lot, and her father told her, you have to follow the rules in my house until you turn 18. When you turn 18, you can do whatever you want. And the first thing she did when she turned 18 is leave. And she left the house on her 18th birthday and came to the United States, where she married an American. So the question here is, she's not technically a refugee, like she was able to leave. So I'm curious, at least I suspect she was. So I'm curious what, because her brother was studying in Spain at the time as well. So what year might that have been? She would be, what would be the last year that would have been possible? That's the real question. When's the last year that would have been possible? Yeah. So let's see what Claude says. Let's review the names while he's doing that. I kind of like Caridad. Dolores. Dolores is Pains, which is pretty funny. But she would be sort of more high class. because she's ambitious, right? The Garvin's mom. Yeah. Let's see. So it's earlier than most people expect. The hard door slammed in October 1962 with the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that's the last time somebody could have left. During the Cuban Missile Crisis of October 1962, travel between the United States and Cuba became restricted, and the Castro government halted regular travel to the United States. Before that, the 1959 to 1962 Golden Exile, you could essentially still go book a flight and go. Okay, so got it. So that means that my aunt must have been older than Garvin's mother, who is 40 something in 1994, because she would have probably left earliest around 20 years old and come to the United States around that time to meet her husband, so 18 to 20 years old. So she would have been born, that would have been in the early 70s. Let's see. This matters, as you'll see, because the people in Cuba were militarized very quickly after the revolution, and that affected people's personalities, especially female personalities, because it went from a traditional culture to a very different sort of militarized culture, very egalitarian in terms of the sexes. If you're familiar, that something similar happened in the Soviet Union. Everybody worked. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, I got it backwards. She must have been born in the early 50s and left in the early 70s. I misspoke. Damn, it's going to cost me time. Put the timer on just so that I'll spend all day with Claude here. Let me see if Gemini is a little faster. Hey Gemini, I'm writing a character that was around in her 40s in 1994, and she's a Cuban, and that would have put her born in the early 1950s. And my question is, what is the typical Cuban female baby name from the early 1950s? An important detail is that she is ambitious. So she came to the United States. She married an American man in the story, and she's very ambitious. So she's demanding and ambitious. So she probably comes from a higher end family, and that's important because I need a name that's of that class or of that strata of society. All right, let's see. Well, Gemini's working. That correction makes everything up. Born in 1952. Puts her departure on 1970-72, which makes her 42 in 1994. Yep. One mechanic to bank for the backstory. Since early 70s is the very tail end of the legal window, she'd be leaving on the Freedom flights, which ended in 1973. Bingo. So she just barely caught the last call, and those flights weren't open boarding. You needed a relative already in the US claiming you, and you waited on a list sometimes for a year or two. So her exit story is a built-in piece of texture. Somebody was already in Miami waiting for her, a sibling, an aunt, a parent who'd gone ahead in the Golden Exile a decade earlier and then sent for the rest. That actually gives you a nice family shape for free. Relative who got out early, established a foothold in Miami, and then pulled her over on one of the last flights around 71, 72. She arrives at 19 and 20 as an adult who remembers Cuba, not a kid who grew up there, and within a few years marries the Anglo who becomes Garvin's father. Garvin's born around 72 if she has him fast, which fits him being 22 in 1994. The remembers Cuba, arrives as a young adult, married an American almost immediately. Profile is a specific kind of Miami Cuban woman, old enough to carry the island in her bones, and her accent young enough that she built her whole adult life here. It'll shape how she talks, what she fears, and how she reacts when she figures out what Garvin's tangled up in. Want to nail down who the relevant in Miami was? The person is probably still alive and could be a useful character, the one who knows where everybody really came from. No, I don't want to do that. What I want to do that is actually more interesting is man, AIs distract you. Let's see. Oh. So, oh yes, that's right. So, how much of the militarization culture, how much of, because she was around 10 when the revolution happened. So she must have gotten the indoctrination wave hard. And that's the kind of question I'm looking for, is how much of the militarization would have gotten into her personality based on her age bracket before she came out to the United States. Yeah, let's check on Gemini. Beatrice, I like it. Beatrice Hackett. Yeah. Valeria Clara. If her name is Beatrice or Alejandra, she might insist Americans pronounce it correctly with the Spanish cadence to maintain her sense of pride in upper-class roots. A note on the last name: in high society, people keep the family names themselves carried immense weight. If you haven't picked her maiden name yet, old money Cuban names like Betancourt, Orango, Cardenas, De La Torre, or Bacardi instantly signal to anyone familiar with Cuban history that you came from the top tier of the island's wealth. Okay, great. So I'm going to go with Beatrice. We got a name. I like it. I don't like Mercedes for her. Let's see. Mercedes isn't terrible. Mercedes Hackett. Beatrice Hackett. I like Beatrice. Beatrice Hackett it is. Let's go with that. All right. So we flip over to the writing. And let's go to the characters. Boom. And let's go here. And we got a name. Beatrice. So guys, names matter. Beatrice Hackett. Let's see. Let's give her an aristocratic name. Let me look back at what some of the aristocratic names might have been. This is nice that it gave me De La Torre, Betancourt. I'll go with Beatrice Hackett de la Torre. Hackett Cárdenas. Hackett Arango. Hackett Betancourt. I'll go with Hackett de la Torre. Why not? I don't care. Let's see. So for those of you who don't know, Cubans, well, it's a Spanish, comes from Spain. In Europe, they would hyphenate their names when they'd get married, so you'd get the man's name and then a hyphen and then the female's maiden name, and that way you'd get the family dynasty is inscribed in the name, right? It's preserved in the name for both families, both lineages. Okay, so great, and now we got to change the name to Beatrice. Okay, I'm good. And then she's heavy, loud, and hostile. Her game is finding emotional security. She's hostile, yeah. So let me pull back a little bit on that hostility thing. Make sure that I got the right militarization wave of immigrants. So it's kind of precise work for a second we got to do here. Let's see what we can figure out. So back to the research, and let's see. Let's see what we got. Let's go to, I think I asked Claude, right? Yes. Good instinct, but let me tighten the timeline first because it changes the answer. Born in 1952, she's 6 or 7 when the revolution wins. In January 1959, about 10 during the missile crisis, and she leaves around 1820-72. So her entire formative education, roughly first grade through adulthood, happens inside the revolutionary state as it was actively building its indoctrination machinery. That's the most thoroughly processed age bracket there is. Let me pull the specifics so the details are tight. Here's the key reframe before the details. A kid from a family that left doesn't absorb the indoctrination the way a true believer kid does. She got marched through the entire apparatus at school while hearing the opposite at home, and that split is the actual character goal. She's not indoctrinated or untouched. She's someone who can perform the rituals fluently and despises them, which is a very specific kind of person. Let me lay out what her age bracket actually went through. This is really neat, this history. The machinery she could not have escaped. She starts school right as the state takes over. By May of 1961, the government had taken control of all private schools, and in September, it expelled a large number of priests and nuns. So she started at a Catholic school, likely. It's gone by the time she's 9, and she's folded into the state system. That same stretch creates the things that define a daily childhood. The Committees for the Defense of the Revolution and the Federation of Cuban Women were created in 1960. By 1961, the CDRs claimed almost 800,000 members, visible on every block. Those were the enforcers of the regime. A CDR in her block meant her neighborhood had an official watcher logging who came and went. That's the ambient texture of her whole adolescence. The pioneers and the informant mechanic. This is the piece that lodged deepest. Boy Scouts were outlawed and converted into Soviet-style Young Communist Pioneers for elementary children and the Young Communist Association for teenagers. The uniform was real and daily. Blue uniforms with red with red kerchiefs and red berets. The standard garb of Cuba's young pioneers, and the part that warps a child. Children wore uniforms and were instructed to alert authorities if their parents were not true revolutionaries. It worked well enough that some children began parroting Castro's slogan and becoming informants, and parents became fearful of their own children and self-censored what they said in front of them. For a girl whose family is quietly anti-Castro, that is the formative experience, not believing the doctrine, but learning at 8 or 9 that she must never repeat at school what's said at the dinner table. She becomes a child who is fluent in 2 languages. Yeah, so it creates dishonesty. The whole system creates dishonesty. School to countryside. Her generation is exactly the first cohort run through this. This is a very interesting part. The junior high class of 1971 was designated the first generation educated in schools in the countryside, and she's in junior high to high school at the age in the late 60s, right in it. The regime was openly military. Days began with the national anthem at 5:30, then agricultural work from 7 to 11, lunch, and more work to 5 p.m. The routine of the schools was almost military in nature. The stated goal was explicit: to socialize children away from the home so educators could separate them from places where they might be taught pre-revolutionary values. Man, what a dystopia. So she did hard physical agricultural labor as a teenager on a schedule, in formation. That residue is physical, not ideological. She's capable. She doesn't flinch at early mornings or manual work. She has a spine of discipline under whatever softness she presents. A woman who can cane at 15 is not fragile at 32. The Gusano years, the part that probably matters most. Here the thing the timeline forces. If she left around 71, 72, her family applied to leave years earlier. Families waiting exit were branded Gusanos, often lost jobs, and the men were frequently sent to agricultural labor camps as the price of the exit permit. Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Not myself, thankfully, but my family. Yeah. So her last few years in Cuba weren't neutral. She was a marked kid in a marked family doing the pioneer rituals at school while everyone knew her family was trying to crawl out. That's a humiliating, watchful holding pattern adolescence. It tends to produce one of two adults: bitterly permanent anti-communist, or someone so exhausted by politics she refuses to discuss it at all. This is where you see the bias in this thing. You wouldn't call somebody an anti-Nazi, right? Like it's understood that this is a gross violation of human rights. Whatever, right? What is these things are programmed, right? Whatever, whoever programs them. What is the nets out for the character? What this nets out for the character? Ideology. Almost certainly rejected. She left her family. She's not a believer. Reflexes that stuck. Code switching, discretion, threat reading, distrust of authority and of talkers, a horror of informants and of children betraying parents. Physical toughness. That's the key. She's physically and emotionally tough. Comfort with regimentation, even as she resents it. Miami politics. She's likely hardline anti-Castro because nobody hates the machine like someone raised inside it who got out. That's the dominant 1994 Miami Cuban posture anyway, so she fits the community, but hers comes from the body, not from a pamphlet. She spent her childhood learning to detect live surveillance and people not being what they claim, which means a woman like her sat down in a story where her son, Garvin, is unknowingly working for men who killed his father. She is exactly the character equipped to smell it. Yeah, but she doesn't smell it. She bails. Yeah. She doesn't smell it. She actually bails on her son as soon as he goes to jail. So the idea is that she's got the refugee survival instinct, and as soon as her father's killed, within a few months, she loses weight, gets a boyfriend, and then disappears from the story. She wasn't happy about Garvin anyway because Garvin is a bit of a failure. He failure to launch kid. He's 22 and unemployed and just sits in his room all day. So let's see what Claude says about that. So we got that. Let's go back to writing. We're not here to talk to an AI. We're here to write. But we have her name, Beatrice Hackett de la Torre. And she's heavy, loud, and hostile, finds emotional security. Good. So let's look at her, let's look at her character sheet and then go back to research because I think we got what we came for. So our first decision is not to let her husband eat her donut because it will make him fat. Her decision 2 is Darbo's her husband. Are you calling me fat? Decision 3, she gets a boyfriend and abandons Garvin. And decision 4, she cashes out on Garvin's name, do an interview with Roger. I don't think she'll ever come back. So I think her final decision is gets a boyfriend and disappears. That's going to be that. So this is got to be fixed. So she gets a boyfriend and abandons Garvin. Okay. So decision 3. Yeah. She berates Garvin. For being a loser. Oh man. There you go. There you go. That's her third decision. So she's kind of screaming at everybody. Let's see what Claude said about what I said about her personality. This is gonna be fun. Let's go check it out. Ha, okay, that's better than my version. And it used the same exact psychology I just laid out, just pointed in the other direction. I had her survival instinct making a protector. You made it making an escape artist. Same engine, colder output, and more honest. Because here's what ties it straight back to the backstory we built. Leaving is her core competency. She already did the unthinkable once, walked out of her own country at 20, left whatever she knew, didn't look back, married fast, built a new life from zero. That's not a one-time event in a person, it's a setting. A woman whose fundamental life skill is recognize when a situation is finished and get out clean. That's right. Doesn't suddenly become sentimental at 42. When Garvin's father is killed and the kid lands in jail, she runs the same calculation she ran in 1972. This structure is dead and staying costs more than going, so she goes. The refugee who survives is by definition the one who didn't stay out of loyalty. That's it. That's her character right there. Yeah. Leaving is her core competency. I like that. That's a fun way to describe that character. Okay, the weight and the boyfriend make total chilling sense in that frame. The marriage was probably never the romance. It was, oh, wait. Maybe there's, okay, go back to writing. Let's see. And let's see what we got here. Because, yeah, she loses weight and gets a boyfriend. Yeah. And gets a boyfriend and abandons Garvin, right? And what's funny is, right? Yeah. This is funny. I like the "Are you calling me fat?" But I think it could be funnier if she accuses him of putting on weight. I'm becoming unattractive. Just the the projection. You know, I didn't marry a fat guy. Fatso. That's funny, right? Because she's heavy, right? All right. So we've made this better. Okay, so decision 4, she rates Garvin for being a loser and lacking... oh, wait, no, I got it. Okay. And lacking commitment, lacking staying power when things get tough. That's what she does. So she berates Garvin, you can't commit to anything, right? And then, of course, the next time she meets him, she she leaves him, she abandons him because he's an adult, right? He's 22. So yeah. So that would be all it is. And then I kind of had um, yeah. So I just have a note here. Just the key to the storage facility. I wonder if the mother would have sold all the stuff, or if there were storage facilities in 1994. And that's where the M60 is. Or better yet, a pawn shop. Nice. Garvin buys it back. Okay, I have to ask Claude. This is actually good research. So, going back to Claudius here. And let's see. The character who exits a story is the hardest kind to make, land, because the audience last impression is all they get. The risk is she reads as a plot device instead of a person who chose the fix is to make the disappearance active and specific, not narrated away. Yeah, she goes to visit him in jail and she's lost weight and has a new boyfriend, and she tells him that there's no home to go to anymore. She sold everything. So she's moved in with her new man, right? So what I have a question about is Garvin has an M60 on the wall. That's a machine gun because his father was a Vietnam veteran. So I wonder, would she probably has sold it all off, right? And so I wonder if there would have been an Army Navy store or something like that, which she might have sold that to, where Garvin can discover it, right? At some point, where he sees, he finds it, and then later on he buys it back. Or here's another question. Like, owning that gun, I don't think is a crime. I don't know exactly in 1994, but I don't think it was a crime because his father was in the military. I don't know how he got it, but that's a good question. Assuming that it was legal, when they arrest him, would he get the gun back when he gets out of jail? Let's see. This is an important question because that's his core weapon, is the M60, like Rambo. And while we're doing that, let's go look at our research questions. So we got the Cuban name, and we got the background actually. I hope. Let me see. Yeah. So I'll put this in Beatrice's notes. Yeah. So bitterness, of course. She eats her feelings. She's fat. Yep. Okay. So I'll just throw this here. Leaving is her core competency. I don't like this kind of writing. Honestly, it sounds good, but it's not part of a story. You see what I'm saying? To say leaving is someone's core competency takes maybe half a dozen scenes, right? To create the pattern, right? That this is what the person does. So, or half a dozen moments. And you can say leaving is her core competency. It just sounds so good. It sounds literary, but from a storytelling perspective, it's a cheat. It's a cheat that can bite you later. You have to take these things that feel good and actually expand them into story beats so that the story encodes that concept. And that means that there's only a limited amount of concepts you can actually encode. because you only have so much time. All right, let's see. Let's see where we are on this research. See how it came. Okay. Boom. Boom. Okay. It's really illegal. Okay. Good. Let me get the law right because it changes all three of your questions. Right. So the thing is on the wall changes everything because an M60 is a belt-fed machine gun, full auto, and that puts it in the single most regulated carrier firearm in America. This isn't, my dad was a vet, so he had a rifle over the mantle. This is a federal contraband level object. And once you know that, your three questions answer themselves in a much more interesting way. Cool. This is good research, right? So is it legal? Almost certainly not. And his father was in military detail is exactly what makes it illegal. A real M60, a Vietnam vet carried home as a war trophy, is a bring back. And the overwhelming likelihood is that it was never registered. Here's the wall the law builds. A machine gun is only legal for a civilian if it was registered before May 19th, 1986. Okay. The Hughes Amendment made it illegal for civilians to possess or transfer any machine gun manufactured after May 19th, 1986. And the key is registration in the federal registry before that date. Possessing an unregistered machine gun is a serious federal felony, up to 10 years in federal prison and fines up to $250,000. A guy who smuggled an M60 home from Vietnam in his duffel did not file an ATF form and pay tax stamp on it. So the gun on Garvin's wall is, in legal terms, a live federal felony hanging in plain sight. Interesting. And if it were illegal, a properly registered pre-86 transferable, it's not a wall decoration. It's a small fortune. A transferable M60, the iconic pig of the Vietnam War, can command between $60,000 and $90,000. A failure to launch 22-year-old does not have a $75,000 collector's machine gun on his bedroom wall by accident. So your Army-Navy store idea doesn't work as written, but the reason it doesn't is better. An Army-Navy surplus store sells field jackets, ammo cans, and dummy gear. It's a category not allowed to buy or sell a live machine gun. The only entity that can legally touch one is a federally licensed dealer with a special Class 3 tax stamp. So Mom can't have walked it down to the surplus store. But here's the thing. Mom doesn't know any of that. To her, it's just Garvin's dad's father's ugly war gun. One more thing to liquidate when she sells the house and moves in with the boyfriend, which gives you two much darker, funnier paths. She sells it to the surplus store anyway, illegally and ignorantly for a couple of $100 because she has no idea what it is or that the transaction is a crime. Garvin later finds it in the shop's back room. Now the buyback is loaded. He's trying to reclaim this last piece of his father, and the object itself is a felony he can't legally own, sitting in a shop that's committing a felony by having it. Nobody in this picture knows they're breaking the law. That's pure Gump meets Scarface tonal gold. Or she pawns, dumps it, and it surfaces somewhere worse, and the moment Garvin buys it back, he's a man knowingly in possession of an unregistered machine gun. In a 1994 South Florida crime plot, that's a hook the whole back half of the story can hang on, which it is, right? He gets his machine gun. So now the big one, does he get it back after all? Almost certainly no, for two independent reasons, either which is fatal. First, the gun itself. If it's an unregistered machine gun, it's contraband. Contraband is never returned, it gets seized. Okay. Second, Garvin himself. The instant he's convicted of a felony, he becomes a prohibited person under federal law and can never legally possess any firearm again, let alone a machine gun. So even in the fantasy where the M60 was somehow legal and someone wanted to return it, a felony conviction slams the door permanently. That double lock is great for you because it makes the buyback tragic by design. Picture it. Garvin gets out, scrapes together the money, tracks the gun down, buys it back, reclaiming his dead father, the one man who ever respected him. In Vietnam, a vet whose toughness he never lived up to, and the gun is the one thing he now legally forbidden to own. Okay. The one craft question that decides how to play it, does Garvin know it's a machine gun and illegal, or does he think it's just dad's old war rifle? Okay. Yes, Garvin knows it is a machine gun because he is a Rambo fanatic, and his father, as a bonding exercise, this doesn't happen in the story, but it's background, gave it to him as a present, probably against his mother's wishes, probably had it in the attic somewhere. And it is pre-1986. So Garvin goes to prison because he takes the machine gun, and his father does have ammo for it. So he takes the machine gun with ammo, and he starts walking down the street, and the police don't know what to do. So they run him over, and he goes to jail for a while, and that's where he meets Whitey. So he would probably get a sentence that is not extreme, for walking down the street with the machine gun. He doesn't shoot anybody. Remember, it's 1994. He's just walking down the street trying to get revenge, but it does make the news and it becomes bad optically. And the police, when they see him, they decide to run him over because there's kids playing and they think that Garvin might. They don't know what his motivation is. They're trying to talk to him and he's sort of in a fugue state. So what would be the kind of sentencing that he might get? And assume that his father maybe did register it if it is pre-1986, right? Because his father was in Vietnam, so that would be in the 70s when he actually got the rifle, the M60. Let's see. This is important research too. So let's go back to, well, Claude thinks. Let's go back and look at we got the Beatrice figured out. Let's go to the research questions. And this is, we moved over to Garvin. Where is it? Here he is. Oh, let me switch you guys over. Sorry about that. Yeah. And let's get the research questions. So yes, how would Garvin have an M60 machine gun? That is the key thing. Right? And that's the research we're doing now. So let's see if Claude has come up with an answer for us. Let's see what we have from the Magic Claude machine. Good. Making a registered pre-86 transferable is the right call, but there's one timeline not to untie first. And then the sentencing question has a single hinge that decides everything. Let me check the Florida specific so the numbers are real. Great. So now we're going to get Garvin's sentencing, which we need to be historically accurate, right? For 1994, for somebody just carrying a weapon. Let's see. And while we're doing that, let's go back to Beatrice a second, because what we can do with her is we can say, yes, so scene. Okay, so there's some line here where she says, you are so lucky you didn't shoot the gun. And we're just walking down the street with it. What were you thinking? So the idea is that he's going to get out early, right? The idea is she is reassuring him he will be out soon. Okay, so let's see what we got here. And the research. Let's see. Two things first before the number, and the second one is the whole ball game, the registration timeline. Now you can't have it both ways. A Vietnam bring back, and this is exactly the kind of thing a knowledgeable viewer would catch. A war trophy M60 that Dad carried home could not be legally registered. The only window to register an unregistered war trophy machine gun was roughly 1 month federal amnesty in late '68. After that, the registry was closed to them forever. So they brought it back from NAM, and its illegal registered transfer are mutually exclusive. Okay, the clear fix that keeps everything you want. Dad was a Vietnam vet and an M60 gunner, and then years later, as a civilian gun enthusiast, legally bought the registered transferable M60 on the open market, say around 1983. Nice. Okay, same emotional truth. The gun is his war, his bond with Garvin, the Rambo thing, but the paperwork is clean pre-86. The gun on the wall isn't the one from the war. It's the one he bought because of the war. That's arguably a better detail. Anyway, it's a middle-aged vet recreating his youth, which is very Gump. That's cool. That's cool. We actually have a physical way of doing it, so it is plausible. One small bonus wrinkle you can use or ignore. A registered machine gun is registered to Dad, not Garvin. When Dad dies, it's supposed to pass to Garvin through the NATF air transfer form. If Garvin just takes it off the wall and walks, the gun technically even isn't registered to him yet. A nice quiet bit of he was never entitled to it in the first place if you want it. The hinge that decides the sentence. Does the muzzle ever come up? This is everything. Because of how Florida defines the crime, aggravated assault requires that the accused initially and intentionally and unlawfully threatened by word or act to do violence that he appeared able to carry out, and that this created in the victim a well-founded fear that violence was about to happen. That word is intentional threat. So you have a fork, and you've half written Garvin into the wrong side of it. If he just walks, fugue state, muzzle down, never pointing it at anyone, then legally he's committed no assault because there's no intentional threat. What's left is misdemeanor stuff, improper exhibition of dangerous weapon, and openly carrying a weapon. That's not a real prison. That's no real prison. A few months at most, probably probation. He never meets Whitey. The story breaks. If at any point the muzzle sweeps forward towards the kids or towards the officer trying to talk him down, now it's aggravated assault. Okay, yeah. Okay, I got it. So for the plot to function, you need one beat, even involuntary, even inside the fugue where the gun points at people. The cop decides to run him over because they're kids. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's actually perfect for this stage. So that the moment the barrel drifts toward the playground or towards an officer is the moment they hit him with the car. Perfect. Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking. That single movement is what converts him from weird man with legal into a felon. It also makes the police action read as justified in the moment, which keeps the sympathetic and makes the optics ambiguous. Great for your Roger Gust panic button tabloid angle. Now the number, assume the gun's legal. The legality is what keeps this a state case measured in single-digit years instead of a federal decade. First offense, nobody shot, clear mental health, fugue component, but a loaded machine gun near children, and it became a media circus. That's it. So that's it. He gets charged, terrifyingly, multiple counts of aggravated assault with a shot with a firearm, plus aggravated assault on a law enforcement officer. The kind of stack a prosecutor announces at a press conference as facing decades. The anchor that matters in 1984 is Florida's 3-year mandatory minimum for possessing a firearm during an aggravated assault. Note for period accuracy, the famous 10-20 life law does not exist yet. That's 1999. 10-20 life is what creates mandatory minimums. Okay. Put together the real outcome for a sympathetic first-timer with a fugue state defense, good optics, pressure cutting the other way. He pleads to a reduced count or 2 and does roughly 2 to 4 years. Perfect. That's what I was looking for. He does 2 years. Yes. Okay, so let me copy this, and I'll paste that into Garvin. Let's go to 1. And let's go to our characters. Where's our characters? It's Garvin. Right? And okay. I'll put this in here. And we will go back and pull out the other bit, which is, where did I see the 2? Yep, the cops side. So the moment the barrel drifts. Okay. That's something his mom could tell him. So she'd call him stupid too. That's really funny because he is kind of dumb. All right. Let's see. Okay, so this is what I'm getting. We'll copy it over here. Let's see. Yep. Okay. So I've got that bit of like how he gets the gun. The one more thing I have to look for is I have to look for how he gets the gun back after jail. So let's see what Claude says. Yep. Yeah, okay, whatever. It's interesting when the LLMs try to write for you. It's like, no, that's not what I'm thinking. But this is great. This is very useful. So, okay. So he serves 2 years. Okay. And I'll paste here. Damn. Paste here. Okay. Cool. All right, great. So this is great. Now we have Garvin's research done. So I didn't even have that in terms of how he would get to jail and the legalities of it, but now we know. Let's see. Yes. Okay. All right. So, okay, here we go. Okay, so let's assume that Garvin gets the machine gun back and he uses it at some point. How much? Oh. What if Joel shows Garvin the machine gun? Like he got it back. Oh, that's brilliant. Let me pull that in. I like that. So, okay. So let's go to Joel. Joel. Okay. I'll just put some notes here. Joel in the recruiting scene shows Garvin the M60. He got it back. That's cool. That is what sells Garvin. Nice. Nice. Now there's a connection to his dad. It's the same gun. Joel managed to get it through his connections. He has friends in the evidence department. Oh, interesting. Okay. I just discovered something about the double quotes. All right. So Joel actually gives Garvin the M60. That's the important part. This is all logic stuff that has to be worked out, unfortunately, guys. I don't know how like impressive it is as like big insights, but you know, your movie's got to make sense. It helps if it makes sense. It doesn't really have to make sense. A lot of movies don't make sense. Okay, so let's talk about the recoil and could it actually be handheld? Let's get this in. So, well, questions. Okay. Compared to a regular rifle or pistol. Let's see what Claude says. And maybe I'll add this. Okay, so Garvin, the main character. Let me see. Character uses an M60 machine gun that belonged to his father as one of his core weapons. And so my question is the following. We'll put a little. I'll paste it here. Okay. So I'm pasting in the same question that I asked Claude, good news for your realism. The honest answer to all three actually deflate the Rambo image, which is great because the gap between what an M60 really is and what Garvin thinks it is can carry real story weight. Let me get the specifics right. All three answers point the same direction. A real M60 is a heavy, awkward 2 or 3 man tool, and the Rambo version is a pure fantasy. The gap is usable, so let me give you the straight mechanics and then what they do for Garvin. What it does to a person. An M60 fires a 7.62 by 51 millimeter NATO round. That's okay. That's a 308 Winchester. Let's see if I can look that up. What does a 308 Winchester look like? What does a 308 Winchester round look like? Can you show me an image comparing to other rounds? Let's see. Let's see. This is what. No, this is a 38 special. That makes no sense. A 308 metallic cartridge that is not explicitly detailed in the provided search snippets. Oh, let me see what Claude says, because maybe they got that wrong. Civilian name 308 Winchester. Yeah. Let's see. I'll just put that into 308 Winchester. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, here we go. Let's see what comes out of an M60. Let's get some images. There we go. This looks like a big gun. This looks like a big round, but looks powerful. Damn. Okay, the 270 Winchester and a 308. Yeah, so picture doesn't help. Searching. I think I'm gonna go. I'm trying to get like a good picture of it. Okay. That is a good picture of a 308 Winchester. Let's see. I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. Something tells me I'll get, because I don't want a trademark, you know? Here it is. I'll go with this. I'm gonna copy this image. And if you guys, I'll go somewhere else that you can't see. Ha 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 ha. And I will try to, oh boy. There we go. Oh, it's loaded. Cool. And I will paste this into one of the lookbooks. So you guys will see that soon enough. It's going to be cool as I start visualizing the characters. All right. So there we go. We got that 308 Winchester size comparison. Let's get a size comparison. Let's see what it looks like. 5.56, 308. Wow. So this is a 5.56 and this is a 308. So you guys can see. That's a 5.56. That's an M16 cartridge, or an M4, or AR-15, or whatever they call it. I'm not a gun specialist. Let's see, 338, 308, Creedmoor, 308 Winchester. They look roughly the same. I would love to see it against like pistol rounds, so I could see how big they are. You know. All right. Good to know the ballistics, because there's going to be a lot of shooting in the movie. Okay. Oh, look how small. That's kind of interesting. That's the actual bullet. It's actually relatively small. Huh. Relatively small bullet when you look at the actual slug. It's interesting. I wouldn't want to get hit by any of these, that's for sure. Jesus Christ. Good lord. Ugh, the damage. Oh yeah, here you can see the size difference. Okay, I'll grab this and save it somewhere for later use when I start. Okay, so I think we've got enough research on that topic. Let's go back to here. Okay, what it does to a person. The M60 fires the same cartridge commonly used by larger rifles. This matters because it's a full power rifle cartridge in a completely different class from a pistol round or from the smaller 5.56 and an M16. It leaves the barrel at about 2,800 feet per second and is the round people hunt large game with. A single hit to a human torso isn't a wound, it's catastrophic, through and through tissue destruction. And the gun doesn't fire single shots the way Garvin would use it, at a cyclic rate of around 550 rounds per minute. Even half a second squeeze sends 4 or 5 of those rounds. So realistically, there's no shot someone in the shoulder, they're fine. Anything it hits center mass, it destroys, and it hits in clusters. For your purpose, that's the reason Garvin's not firing it in the more interesting choice. The second he pulls the trigger in a crowd, your darkly comic crime film trips into mass casualty horror, and the tone breaks. The loaded, unfired gun is far more useful to you than a fired one. I think that Garvin probably won't even load it. I think he won't even understand. Because he's, yeah. Counterintuitively, the recoil per shot is manageable, and the reason is the gun's bulk. It's gas operated, and it weighs 23 pounds, 3.5 times the weight of an M16, and all that mass soaks up the kick. Fired the way it's designed to be fired, prone off its folding bipod butt into the shoulder, a trained gunner keeps it on target fine. The problem is never the single shot, it's the climb. In sustained automatic fire, the muzzle walks up and to the side, so bursts have to be short, and the gunner has to fight it back down between them. Off a bipod, that's doable. Held in 2 hands, standing up, it's a losing battle. Interesting. The Rambo question. No, not remotely, and here's the texture. The M60 is a crew-served weapon operated by a team of 2 or 3. The gunner, an assistant gunner who carries the spare barrel and reloads, and an ammunition bearer. The whole design assumes a team because the gun's weight and the amount of ammunition it consumes make it difficult for a single soldier to carry and operate. Hip firing it one-handed with a belt flapping in the wind, Rambo style, fails on every axis at once. So wait, Rambo wasn't realistic? It's 23 pounds before you add a loaded belt, held out from your body, your arm fatigues in seconds, and the muzzle sags. The belt. It feeds from a 100-round linked belt in a bandolier. A loose dangling belt twists and binds, and a bad feed angle jams the gun. Real gunners manage the belt carefully. A flapping Hollywood belt would choke it almost immediately. It's air-cooled with a quick change barrel for a reason. Sustained fire makes the barrel glow, and there's a whole spare barrel drill. Hold it wrong and you cook it, and yourself. Control. With nothing braced, the recoil climb means your rounds walk off into the sky or the wall after the first few. You'd hit almost nothing you aimed at. Bonus. Period. Accurate detail you'll love. A dirty M60 can run away, continue firing even after the finger comes off the trigger until the belt runs out. It's a genuine documented failure mode, and it's gold for a fugue state scene, the gun deciding to keep going on its own. So the honest picture of Garvin walking down a Miami street with his father's M60, he's lugging a 23-pound hunk of steel he can barely keep level, with a belt he doesn't know how to manage. In a fantasy he absorbs from Stallone and from Dad, who actually did hump the thing through Vietnam. He is not a one-man army, he's a kid. Cosplay, of course, yeah. Okay, cool. I learned a lot about the weapon. Let's just, yeah. So I like all this information, and I'm going to synthesize it real quick. Let's go. So we're back here, and we're going to go to Garvin, because his M60 is, yep. So we'll go, fugue and sentencing. Okay. And then we'll go halfway house. Halfway house. Okay, and then the betrayal. Okay, so the M60. Okay, the weapon. And then we'll put all this, okay? The weapon, the M60. Okay, so 23 pounds. Okay, cleaning this up. Oh, let me go back to where I am so you guys can see what I'm doing. So the weight is 23 pounds. Okay, a bad feed jams the gun. Okay. Heat, it's air cooled with a quick change barrel for a reason. Sustained fire makes the barrel glow. That's gonna be awesome at the end when he holds it. Control. With nothing braced, a recoil climb means your rounds walk off into the sky or the walls after the first few. So Garvin would aim it down, and then it would rise up and just massacre. So let's see. Bonus period, accurate detail you'll love. A dirty M60 can run away, continuing firing even after the finger comes off the trigger until the belt runs out. Cool. And I like that. That's kind of neat. It'll turn into like a kind of a golden barrel. It's a nice detail. All right. I'm loving this. Let's see where we are with our research questions. Okay, we got the damage. It will destroy the body. Let me actually just go back. I'm going to pull one little thing about the damage. Recoil does. That's just a single hit is catastrophic. There's no shot somebody in the shoulder and they're fine. Anything that hits center mass, it destroys, and it hits in cluster. So let me just put this through. Oh, and it hits in clusters. Okay. So I'm just going to put in the damage real quick into my notes here for Garvin, the weapon. And let's just put that front and center. So isn't a wound, it's catastrophic. And then half second squeeze since 4 or 5 rounds. And then anything hits center mass, it destroys and it hits in clusters. Cool. So now we have everything we needed to know about that little research question. Could it actually be held in a practical manner? It can be, but only for a short bit. Okay, how would you steal a car in 1994? Garvin steals a lot of cars. Okay. That's the last real quick research question we need to ask here. Let's go to the research. Bring up the research. Okay, final question. Garvin steals a lot of cars. What was the state-of-the-art MO for stealing cars in 1994? So you'd be stealing cars that are older than 1994, maybe from the late 80s, because cars lasted less back then, I assume. Because cars lasted less back then, maybe 5 to 10 years for most cars, correct? Let's see what it says. And while I'm waiting for Claude, I'll drink a little of my tiki water here. My Ron John surf shop. And while that's going, let me copy this to this. Let's see how Gemini does it. And it's well-timed historically. 1994 sits right at the peak of the American car theft era, just before the technology that killed it. Let me pull the period specifics because the right details here are about which cars and why more than the mechanics. All right. Let's see what. You are spot on about the timeline and lifespan of the vehicles. In 1994, a seasoned car thief like Garvin would absolutely be targeting late 1980s and early 1990s models. Back then, cars hit the junkyard much faster due to rust and simpler engineering, meaning the average car on the street was mechanically primitive. Crucially, 1994 was right on the cusp of a security revolution. This was the peak era of the club steering wheel lock. Oh my god, the club! I remember that. Oh my god. Yes. I gotta put the club in. Come on, guys. We gotta put the club. It's so good. I'll just put it here under, actually, I'm gonna put it under, let's look at our stories. I'll just put it under story A, Garvin. And this is for fun and games. So for those of you who don't know, fun and games is the first half of the second act. And we're stealing cars. 1994. Okay. So I got that in. Let's see what else I got. Because cars this era relied entirely on purely mechanical keys with zero computer handshakes required to start the engine, the state-of-the-art MO for a professional like Garvin was all about raw, brutal mechanical bypass. Garvin's toolkit. If Garvin is a pro, he isn't messing around with hot wiring wires under the dash like they show in old movies. Instead, his MO would center on three classic, highly effective techniques. The column pop. This was the absolute bread and butter move for 80s and 90s cars, particularly General Motors vehicles, which were the most stolen cars of the era. Interesting. And Fords. The tool, a slide hammer, a tool body shops used to pull out dents, featuring a heavy weight that slides along a metal rod or heavy-duty screwdriver. The Garvin breaks the car window, gets inside, and screws the tip of the slide hammer directly to the keyway of the ignition cylinder. With one violent yank of the slide weight, he slams the entire lock cylinder straight out of the steering column. With the cylinder gone, the internal ignition switch is exposed. Garvin just sticks a flathead screwdriver or pocket knife into the empty hole, twists it like a key, and the car starts. This also snaps the mechanical steering wheel lock automatically. A pro could do this in under 15 seconds. Oh, this is great. Wow, that's going to be so fun to visualize. Okay. This is great research. How to steal cars in 1994. Okay. And I'm going to pop that in. There you go. There you go. Okay, so we got the column pop. It's so cool. All right. I mean, stealing cars isn't cool if you get your car stolen. That sucks. But it's cool to know the mechanics of this historical thing. The Slim Jim. Before he can pop the column, he has to get inside. In 1994, car doors used physical metal rods connecting the exterior lock to the latch inside the door frame. A Slim Jim, a long, thin, flexible strip of spring steel with notches cut to the end. Garvin slides it down between the rubber weather stripping. He feels around. Okay, this worked flawlessly on almost every 80s and early 90s domestic car. Bypassing the club. Because the car theft was an all-time high during the early 90s, millions of people used the club, that heavy, bright red metal car bar locked across the steering wheel. If Garvin finds the car he really wants, but it has the club on it, he doesn't try to pick the lock. The trick, he uses a cheap hacksaw or bolt cutter. He doesn't cut the hardened steel of the club itself. He cuts the actual steering wheel, which is just thin metal covered in foam and plastic. He saws through the wheel in about 5 seconds. bends it open, slides the club right off, and drops it on the floor, drives away. This is great. This is so cool. All right. We're going to throw that in. Let's see. Oh, what am I doing here? Let's go to story. Story A. Yeah. Okay, and here. We'll paste this. Bypassing the club. This is going to be fun. There's a scene where he's got to get somewhere fast, and the car's going to have the club in it. Okay, let's see. Back to 2. Historical details to feature the Pullout series. It says Pullout stereo. If Garvin is stealing cars from that era, he'll constantly run into the aftermarket tape decks or early CD players that owners took with them. Drivers had pull-out stereos with metal handles. I remember those. Or removable faceplates they carried in their jackets so thieves wouldn't smash their windows just to steal the odd radio. Garvin might hop into the car and find just a gaping hole with wires in the dashboard. The nightmare cars. If Garvin tried to steal a higher-end car, like a Corvette, a Lexus, or a high-end European import, he might run into General Motors' VATS system. Introduced in the late 80s, these keys had a tiny visible black resistor chip embedded in the metal blade. If he tried to pop the column in one of these, the car's computer would detect the lack of a resistor chip and electronically lock down the fuel pump for several minutes, leaving Garvin stranded in a dead car. A smart thief in 1994 knew exactly which cars had these chips and avoided them unless they carried a pocket full of different resistors to bypass the system. So he's going to carry resistors, baby. Yeah, so Garvin wants to steal nice cars sometimes too. So what kind of a resistor tool might he have that would allow him to pop the car and then use a resistor? Let's see if this has anything. Okay, perfect air for 1984. High watermark for American car theft. It's about which were easy and which had a resale market. First year longevity premise adjusted slightly. Cars in 94 didn't last like today's. Back then, they lasted about 7 or 8 years. But the cars Garvin would steal aren't clapped out beaters limping toward a junkyard. They're desirable, common, reliable cars from the 80s with weak locks. The all-time poster child is the Honda Accord. Lack of security features combined with its sheer popularity made the car thieves love most, so much so that in 1984 Accord stayed the single most stolen car in America for years. Okay. At the level you'd shoot it, this was pre-electronics, so it was a physical craft, and a competent thief was fast. The whole point was getting in and rolling before anyone clocked it. Getting in meant defeating the door, the Slim Jim down the window channel move everyone's seen, or just punching a lock. Getting it running meant attacking the ignition, popping or yanking the lock cylinder out of the steering column with a slide hammer dent puller, and turning the exposed switch to a screwdriver or going under the dash. On a lot of 80s GM columns, you could practically peel the cylinder with a screwdriver and a little muscle. It was speed and nerve, doing it in under a minute in a parking lot without looking like anything was wrong. I keep it at that depiction level rather than a how-to. The cinematic truth is in the calm and the speed, not the wire cutters. Sensors. The iconic countermeasures. Use it. This is the era of the club. The amateur stands there defeated by a 40 hunk of metal. Which side of that Garvin tells you, okay? Miami angle. 2 different economies pulled stolen cars in 94. One is the chop shop. Vehicles taken to chop shops where they're stripped and components are sold, which is why Hondas were prized. Export. Cars stolen stuff, shipping containers, sent out through the port of Miami to the Caribbean and Latin America, where a clean American Accord is worth a fortune and no one checked the VIN. For your story, the export pipeline is a ready-made connective tissue to the larger crime world. This is yes, this is good. So the car exports. That's what the halfway house does. So the character question that sets the texture: is Garvin a skilled thief or a lucky one? A genuinely good booster is a craftsman, calm, fast, almost bored. The real competence that sits in ironic contrast to his failure to launch life. Okay. Okay, so he's actually really good at stealing cars, and he'll learn that in the halfway house. So I think we got a good bit there to bring home. So let's bring that home. Okay, we'll go here and just add this in, and then we have to clean up a little bit. Okay. Miami has 2 different economies pulling stolen cars in 1994. There's a chop shop. That's not, no. This is it. Miami stolen car economy. The one that's appears South Florida's export cars stolen, stuffed in shipping containers, and sent out through the port of Miami to the Caribbean and Latin America. Yep. All right. Cool, that's great. So we got a lot of stuff here about stealing cars. Let's see if Gemini... I think I'm good. There's a lot. Let's go back to our research questions, and there we go. Garvin steals cars. All right. And then I think that's it, guys. We've been running almost 90 minutes now, so this has been a long one. I'm going to have to switch the thumbnail to just research. So, well, if you made it this far, thank you so much. I really appreciate your patience. And if you're interested in the tools I'm using to write this way, I'm going to show you something here, which you might like. Oh, not that. There you go. So I have a video that I sell, which is the Screenwriting Masterclass, and it shows you the tools that writers like me, ghostwriters, use to build stories quickly. So to give you just a little bit of... Let me just go here. I know I got you somewhere. Here we go. There we go. So if you want to learn a craft, I am a professional script doctor. If you want to learn the exact tools demonstrated in this video that working writers use to write, rewrite, and develop stories quickly, this lecture in the picture right here will show you how. There's also a link in the description. The tools that you'll learn in this lecture will apply to any form of narrative storytelling: screenplays, novels, comics, televisions, games, all of it. If you're telling a story, these are the tools that I've found most useful in my writing career. And it includes full scene breakdowns from well-known films and hands-on guidance for anyone serious about telling stories. So if you want to write, this might be really helpful. A portion of every sale, if you buy the video, goes to the Arts Accelerator, a nonprofit dedicated to developing the skills of emerging artists. And you can find out more at artsaccelerator.org. All right, that's about it. Thank you so much, guys, for sticking with me this far. And I will see you on the next one, where we will clean all this stuff up and continue our research until we've answered all the questions we need to consolidate and start the outline. We're almost there. This is like a pretty built out story already. And it's going to be probably a couple of more sessions to just get the backgrounders, so that when we put it all together, it feels authentic already from the beginning, and the scenes kind of write themselves. So that's where we're going to start next time. So thank you so much, guys, for sticking with me this long, and I'll see you on the next one.